Good evening, everyone. It's on or about 6:30, so I'll call this meeting to order and ask everyone to please silence cell phones or electronic devices. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the February 18th, 2020 Council meeting agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, and if so, please state the general nature thereof. And none noted. Oh, sorry. Councillor Tadman.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I have 4 different ones, and it's all because I own waterfront property, which I would like to participate in, but I can't. So for number 7 with Dave Dingle's delegation, I will declare there. And for the 2 motions, 10.1 and 10.2, and also the 16.1 Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus resolution.
(16.1) FYI correspondence. Thank you, Councillor Tadman. Sorry, I didn't see your hand up. Anyone else? Thank you. Are there any announcements? Councillor Rowley.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to thank the municipality, those staff and councillors who participated in the ENSS Garden of Hope Trivia Night last Thursday. We had a lot of fun, and I haven't heard any numbers as far as money that they've raised, but it was a good night. And yeah, we had a pretty good team. Yeah, kind of ended up in the middle of the pack.
Don't.
Got to blow your own horn.
Thankfully, they didn't show the scores at the end of the night. They just told us who the winner and runner-up were. Yeah, we were solidly middle of the pack, which doesn't get you anywhere.
I had a better team, for the record.
Oh, yes. Deputy Mayor Vink abandoned ship and went to the Brian Todd Community Memorial Community.
And we had more fun.
You guys looked like you were having a lot of fun, and we did very much look like stuffed shirts, which didn't help because I wore a tie, but that's another story. We did have a good time, didn't we? All right. Any other announcements? Councillor Bateman.
I just want to start by saying Councillor Tadman and I had more fun because we were at Lower Trent. It's getting more fun than that. It's kind of an announcement. I just want to let everybody know that sometime in March I'll send an invite out to all the council and staff if they want to come. I'm in the final stages of the rebranding, so hopefully on Thursday everything will be handled. It's going to go really quick now. So, and the invite will be for the unveiling in the library of the new logo.
Thank you. Any other announcements? A couple of exciting things happened at 2 different pharmacies over the course of the last week. We had Life Labs open up at the PharmaSave at Prince Edward Square, so they're now offering their services in terms of taking blood and other tests. And a new walk-in clinic opened last week, but the official opening was today at the Global Health Pharmacy across the way over here. So everyone understands that a lot of these things aren't primary care medicine, but they certainly help fill the gaps while we continue to seek primary care personnel, nurse practitioners and doctors for our community. Anything else? So I'll move on to the adoption of the minutes, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that Council approve the February 3rd, 2020 Council meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council approve the February 10th, 2020 Council planning meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. We do have one public meeting this evening, and it's with regard to the 2020 budget consultation. And I'll ask Ms. Whitfield, can you please provide us with information about Council's budget consultation process?
Certainly, thank you. The requirement for the yearly budget is found in Section 290 of the Municipal Act. There's no statutory requirement for this public consultation meeting, but in the interest of transparency and accountability, the municipality provides public consultation and question period opportunities at each of our Committee of the Whole meetings. As well, Council has provided one final public consultation opportunity tonight. The staff have advertised for this budget public consultation meeting in the Brighton Independent on February 12th, 2020. And the annual budget policy for the municipality provides that annual budget meeting will be advertised in the local paper, and the public presentation of the annual operating and capital budgets will occur at a council meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Whitfield. And really, we should pass a motion to go into this public meeting. I apologize for that. And I do have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that Council move into the public meeting February 18th, 2020 at 6:36 p.m. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. And we won't get you to repeat yourself. That would be unfair. Are you prepared to present the budget, Ms. Whitfield, the budget estimates and what the 2020 budget as recommended would accomplish for the municipality?
I am, and I'll just move forward.
Very well, the floor is yours.
High-tech council chambers.
Wait for it. Wait for it.
Okay, so our budget timetable, our budget process is that on October 20th, 2009, we passed a budget process policy. Our budget timetable was presented to council members at the January 13th, 2020 council meeting, and our first draft budget was presented on January 27th. We moved into budget deliberations again on January 29th, February 5th, and February 6th. And then quickly after, on the 11th, we had a second draft budget. And here we are a week later, February 18th, and we're presenting at the public consultation meeting. So the agenda, some of the things that we'll look at this evening, the 2020 budget and impact to our taxpayers, budget changes from 2019 and what our budget pressures were. We'll look at where our taxes go and our local municipal tax comparisons for all of the municipalities in Northumberland County for 2019. And finally, we'll look at some highlights of the 2020 budget. So the province has announced that the education levy will go down from 0.00160 to 0.00151, and that's creating a decrease in the education levy of 2.54%. The county's just passed its budget, and the levy increase will be 2.61%, and our municipal levy increase is 5.48%, providing a blended increase of 3.33%. And if your property was assessed in 2019 at $400,000, then that levy increase will cost you $164.17. Our 2020 budget expenditures are $31,767,367. You can see on the slide that environmental services is at just under 39% of that $12,410,000, and public works is next highest at 27.75. And our operating expenditures are $15,392,729. Public Works is 28.68% of that, and environmental services, water and wastewater, is 15.13%. It's important to note that water and wastewater expenditures are paid through water and wastewater fees and not through tax support. and the 2020 capital expenditures, as you can see, 61.57% of those are environmental services, and therefore some projects such as the MBBR, which is 9 million of that 16 million. So in 2020, the water operating budget is increasing, and that's due to some maintenance and wages. And the capital budget is also increasing slightly. Included in that capital budget will be the infrastructure for Sanford Street, as well as chlorinator, water booster station. A review of it. I forgot the word. And also the water reserves that are being used are reserves that were transferred over at year end for some projects. The wastewater budget, the operating budget, is increasing again for our normal maintenance and wage increases. There's also some loan payments in there. And for capital, there's the MBBR, aerators, and bypass chamber and valve, and they're included, as well as the underground infrastructure for Sanford Street. You can see that there is a grant that we're predicting to receive, as well as an increase in wastewater reserves that are being used. So remember that we had put some money away hoping that we would get to this wastewater plant upgrades, and so we're using some of our reserves for that. The tax support operating budget is going up, as well as the capital budget much more substantially. The total tax support budget is increasing by $1,555,779, and the capital portion is just over $1 million of that. Reserves will be used for capital projects and for studies and major maintenance items. And the increase to our reserves, you can see, is more than double, and mainly due to modernization funding projects and development charges projects. The budget increase for 2020 is $736,370. And the tax increase is $491,434. As illustrated here, the budget increases the difference in the total operating and capital budgets over the prior year. During any given year, the assessment base may change due to growth. It could be positive growth, and it could be negative growth. These growth changes occur when there's a change in property state or condition, use. Tax write-offs could be a decrease, a negative growth number. And so we had a positive growth again of $244,936. If we add that 2019 growth to the 2019 tax levy, we arrive at a tax levy comparator of $8,957,778. Any increase over that amount would be a tax increase. So of that $736,370 budget increase, which is equivalent to a 5.49% tax increase, you can see that 0.79% of that is capital increase, 0.33% of that is due to external budget increases, and 4.09% of that tax increase is for local service delivery. This just illustrates the increases to the budget by department. So if we look at a property that was assessed at $400,000 last year and increased by our average assessment increase, it would be at $410,204 this year. And the taxes would be $5,099 a year. And this is how it would be distributed. So just more than a third of the taxes that we collect here stay in Brighton to pay for our local services. So this table illustrates the changes to our municipal budgets over the last 5 years. It's healthy. It's good news to see that our capital is increasing and our reserve is increasing, because that demonstrates council's commitment to improving our infrastructure. And this is a municipal tax comparison for our municipalities in Northumberland County in 2019. Brighton had the third lowest tax rate in the county. So for a property that was assessed last year, $400,000, the taxes in Port Hope Urban were $6,273. And on the other end of the scale, Hamilton Township's taxes were $4,580, and Brighton's were $348 higher at $4,928. So some of our budget highlights, we had some modernization projects, thanks to the modernization funding that we received last March. And so we are planning on an asset management plan and software, records management software, some technology for this council chambers, building security initiatives, fiber connectivity to municipal buildings, and this is rural buildings as well as our urban buildings, and then a facilities assessment on our municipal buildings. And some of our service delivery enhancements include filling staff vacancies, purchasing an electric SUV, adding a rubber tire excavator to the fleet so we can have an enhanced brushing program in-house, constructing a new skateboard park, completing servicing to the industrial park, and constructing a moving bed biofilm reactor, MBBR. And our asphalt road projects are Sanford Street and Telephone Road. And this is a list of our surface street and overlay road projects. And in environmental services, construction of the MBBR, valve replacement and bypass chamber at the lagoon, and new aerators. And for water, there's water modeling, a booster station study, and chlorinators. Some of the boards and agencies that the municipality is partnering with include this list. And this is how we are supporting our community, although this list is not exhaustive. There are a few that are not on here. So thank you. Thank you to Wayne and Dave and Bob and a few others that attended tonight, but especially thank you to council and to the senior management team for your contributions to the budget process.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitfield. And I'll echo this sentiment of thank you to senior staff for collecting all the information that was necessary for you to get those giant binders together, Mrs. Whitfield, and thank you, Deputy Mayor, for managing the process of herding the cats for the various budget meetings. It's appreciated. Your work in that is appreciated as well. Thank you. Are there any persons present, that's all four of you out there, who have questions or comments regarding the budget presentation, the 2020 budget, and the 2020 budget as recommended by the Committee of the Whole? Come on, gents. Anyone? Thank you. Are there any questions or comments regarding the proposed budget from members of council? Councillor Rowley?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a good budget. I think we're moving ahead. That's a good thing. I kind of feel for our staff. We advertise these public meetings. People want to be interested. People want to know what's going on. And we have 4 people here. It's a lot of work for staff to get these presentations ready for a night like this. And it's too bad that the public doesn't show. They obviously aren't worried about their tax increase.
Or they're trusting in the council they elected to do what they believe is the right thing, and that's what we hope is true. Councillor Tadman.
I wouldn't necessarily go with that assumption. They're probably too mad to show up.
That could be too. I just note that during the slideshow, it was a stark it was stark and obvious that about 15% of our budget is completely out of our control with external budgets. Over 12% of that is in policing alone. So I just think that's always an interesting slide to see come up. And I also note that you show Telephone Road still as an asphalt road, although there may be some discussion around that. I don't want to lose sight of that. And one of my comments during the budget meeting was just because we're passing it this way doesn't mean we have to construct it that way. And I'm getting head nods from the Director of Public Works, so I'm happy to have that head nod. Councillor Bateman, did you have a comment?
I was just going to ask, with the MBBR, is there still a hope of financing? Will that impact this down the road if we do get some?
You mean grants from the, yeah, so we have applied to the Green Fund, which would be that 2.4, which we budgeted for, which would be that $2.4 million. And I have sent a letter to Mr. Piccini and the Minister of Environment asking if there's any other funds available for people that are in our situation where we've been ordered by the province to install a system. I was in communication with Mr. Piccini's office today, reiterating all of those letters that have been emails that have been sent, and with a promise back from his constituency office that they'd get right on that. So hopefully that's true. We'll see what happens going forward. Any other comments or questions on the budget? Council? Mr. Castleman, do you have any comments on the proposed budget? Thank you. Mrs. Whitfield, do you have any final comments? Thank you. There will be a bylaw presented at the next council meeting for our consideration, and that's on March 2nd. We didn't receive any comments except those from council, so we don't need to pass that motion, right? And I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council move out of the public meeting of February 18th, 2020 at 6:51 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And we have one delegation this evening. It's Mr. Dingle from the Historic Murray Canal District Advocacy Group. Dave, if you'd like to come forward. And while you're coming forward, I'll let you know that delegations have 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes to present council with your information. Welcome, welcome, you bet. Could you push the purple button in front of you there, Dave? Our meetings are recorded. There you go, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Ostrander and councillors. I'll be brief. So our Murray Canal District Group is advocating for eliminating red tape and delays in getting Conservation Authority shoreline work permits in the face of the potentially catastrophic spring floods. Our group is about 200 people strong currently, growing. We've researched this issue extensively, and we've also now attracted 400 signatures on our online petition about the matter, and we've met and socialized extensively with local conservation authority, CAOs, MPPs, mayors, and councillors in both Quinte and here, Quinte West. So at present, what we found is that there are many owners trying to protect shoreline properties who have shared stories of frustrating lengthy efforts to meet engineering study requirements for Conservation Authority permit approvals. And we've also found that across the two local authorities, we've encountered a large number of inconsistencies in their policies, permit costs, and in the application of discretionary limits on the need for coastal engineering studies. So that's why we're here with input to support the motion to investigate costs for a flood mitigation expert team. But before we go further, we just want to make it clear about one thing, that our group respects the much needed work that people of the conservation authorities do, and those people, we have a lot of respect for them, and it's clear there are many residents that have worked well with the conservation authority staff over the years. In fact, I'm one of those residents, so there's that. But these are not normal times, with two 100-year flood events in the last 3 years, and almost certainly a third coming performing this year. There are extraordinary conditions placing an incredible strain on the customary processes of the Conservation Authority, and we urgently need to get quicker, more responsive performance than seems possible given how they are set up and required to operate. So that's why we're here. So we've learned that conservation authorities operate under the Conservation Authorities Act, and they're partly funded by the municipality. I understand it's 150 grand or thereabouts for Brighton right now this year. And it appears funding for the conservation authorities is also governed by audits on their performance in upholding conservation authority legislation. It's not our place to assess why it happens, but it appears that the conservation authorities seem to be somehow mandated to require coastal engineering studies in many scenarios where they could, in fact, use discretionary authority to waive those requirements and still be compliant with the Act. And given the extreme flood risk conditions we're now facing, we think that somehow that has to happen. So we're here to request that steps be taken to encourage the conservation authorities to avoid requiring coastal engineering studies unless it's absolutely needed, by having the municipality make some limited funds available to retain a flood mitigation expert and to give and to have that expert give informed guidance to the conservation authorities to recommend where discretion is warranted, and that we should also establish monitoring of all those recommendations to track the process and the outcomes. We've met multiple times with Wood PLC and Baird Engineering, two large engineering firms, to get their advice. They're in emphatic agreement with us that they tell us they are often called on by owners of small properties who are struggling to get a study done for modest work, and the work will likely be done by a property owner and quite likely won't be supervised or reviewed by the engineering firm. Coastal studies for these modest, low-impact projects are costly and inefficient to do, and they prevent the engineering firms from attending to other demands that could have more impact and benefit. As corporate citizens and in consideration of their engineering profession ideals, they've encouraged us to bring this recommendation forward. And specifically, given the emergency that is rapidly overtaking us, we highly recommend the idea of establishing this flood mitigation expert to provide this expert input and to give comfort to the Conservation Authority by just commenting on big picture planning issues that a proposed mitigation effort should not require an engineering study, and this can be done without getting into the technicalities. It's just, where is this property? Have permits been issued before? Is the same work going to be done again? Is there any reason to go to all that trouble when it's brain dead simply obvious that there's no need for the study in the first place? And that's the level of input that would be needed. We don't think it would be expensive, and we think it would give the conservation authorities comfort, and managing and monitoring this would also shine a light on how often this is a problem. And so anyway, so that's basically the recommendation that we're making. We have identified 4 main conditions where there should be serious consideration to not requiring an engineering permit. If it's already been done once before, which is the case in many properties, same materials, the Conservation Authority does have the ability to allow material to be placed without a study. They don't have any limits on how much they're allowed to recommend. And also, in the case of emergency permits, the Conservation Authority doesn't want to issue emergency permits till there's an emergency. That's stupid. It should be done now. There is an emergency already, and if the Conservation Authority recognized that an elderly citizen who's suffering from a heart condition and is contemplating having to save their property in an emergency, that's an emergency now. And again, engineering firms would be very supportive of not requiring a study if other scenarios, other attributes of the scenario support the recommendation. And then early group permits for groups that come before this group. before this expert. Anyway, so that's our recommendation. We did get a rough budget for what we would suggest is a 1-month expert program. We think it could handle a very large number of cases, and we expect at the $150 to $200 an hour plus expenses rate that engineers charge for their time, that a rough budget would be about $20,000, and this would allow to assess the effectiveness and quantity of properties and the amount of shoreline protected and served. And anyways, and we've got a document here that has all of this summarized and also has some potential suppliers, and we very much would encourage doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dingle. I will open the floor to council for any questions of clarification. Members of council? Councillor Anderson, we'll let Mr. Dingle hand out his
Oh, that's okay.
presentation. Okay, go ahead.
Good presentation, Dave. Have you had a presentation like this to the conservation authorities?
Yes, Ron, we spoke. We spoke with Rhonda Bateman this afternoon. She has a copy of this document, and she agreed that they do have those discretionary abilities that we mentioned, those specific examples, and she encouraged us to make the balanced presentation we did, where we're not criticizing the Conservation Authority. We really just think that they're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, and if they were given external qualified input, that they might well find the comfort they need to be able to waive these requirements.
So, and by asking that question, if they were receptive to what you're saying, couldn't you or we avoid all of this expense and move along nicely? The landowners could move along nicely to get things done. You still need an engineer, though, I presume, to do the proper job on the shorelines, and you need groups of shoreline people working together. It's not a matter of just one property doing something to their property and hoping for, but the other ones on either side of them doesn't do anything. Nothing will get done properly.
I think it's a really good question, and the way I would state it more succinctly possibly is that couldn't we just ask them to do this anyways, and with that, without paying some external party to look over their shoulder? And I don't think so, because that's what clearly hasn't been happening. And I think they are actually, and if you look at the way they are mandated to comply with their legislative obligations, it forces them to err on the side of really requiring these excessive steps. And there needs to be some way to give them formal comfort to let that go so that they can defend themselves if they get audited. And we've created a monster by the way the bureaucracy is set up there, and it's well intentioned, but that's the real issue, I think. And I think that's the heart of the question, is that if we don't do something, we're likely to get the same.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through the chair. One question with the conservation, and they seem to work well with all the homeowners. Now, one thing, do you know about the policy where you're allowed 1 truckload a year of stone, regardless of the size of property? Let's say you have maybe 500-600 acres. Feet of shoreline. Somebody has 50 feet of shoreline. They're allowed to bring 1 truckload of stone and put it in without having an engineering study or anything. Do you know about that?
Yes, I do. It's a little different than the way you've described it, though, as far as I understand.
Okay.
Yes.
The other one is the permits that are paid, the 2,000 or 2,500. Are they paid to the Lower Trent? Are they paid to the town? Is it a building permit?
Yeah. So, thank you, Councillor LeBlanc. 2 great questions. So, the Conservation Authority has a varying fee permit. There's a standard permit, which is around $500 or $250, and then there's a larger one for $500. And in Brighton, it's completely different in Quinte, in the Quinte Conservation Authority. They do have discretionary ability to allow you to place material without a shoreline engineering study. The amount is up to their discretion. There's no set amount, and there's no frequency. It's not that you can automatically do this without getting a study. If you only do it once a year, you have to apply for a permit, and they can waive the requirement to do the shoreline study, but they most frequently don't.
Can I follow up? Thank you, sir. The other thing, talking with the Conservation Authority, Mrs. Bateman, she was here, and it seemed like she's very willing and accommodating to work with people and to get waiver payment if you have like 10 or 15 houses in a row, to have one permit and one thing to be done. She's very accommodating with that. Have they approached them? Because when I've gone out and citizens have sent me emails, and I've gone and looked where the retaining wall that they built a year ago or 2 years ago is now washing out because they didn't control the energy of the wave before it hit their wall. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, so the Conservation Authority, when you speak to them, are very cordial, and they will agree that they do have these discretionary authorities that they can exercise. They don't seem to do that anywhere near often enough, and the engineering firms are telling us that that is the case. And more to the point, regardless of whether you have a shoreline engineering study or not, the issue of shoddy work happens in either case. And the only difference if an engineer is involved is that they usually get sued. And with these small jobs, the engineer doesn't go on site to inspect after the work is done and is not necessarily required to do that. So it's just a whole bunch of issues that combine, you know, and this is where when you stand back from it and you talk to all these homeowners, this is a real problem, and it's not one that is obvious when you talk to the Conservation Authority because they sound very reasonable, but in aggregate, when you look across everybody, it's a real problem. And so really appreciate anything you guys can do to help us.
Unless somebody else can.
None that I see. Go ahead.
The other one I have is I seem that our Conservation Authority that represents the town, the municipality of Brighton, seems to work very well. And in here, she was very accommodating to go with the one permit and the one engineer, as long as it was all one continuous shoreline.
Yeah.
So it seems like somebody's missing doing the connection and doing the talk. You have two councillors right there that can make that connection and have a lot of respect on the Conservation Authority.
Yeah.
And to get this done, I agree with you, but they also got to look at the energy before the energy hits their break wall, and they're not taking care of that. That's why the break walls are failing. Okay, anyway, that's just my input. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a quick note on that, the Conservation Authorities do not allow single permits for groups. They allow concurrent groups to make concurrent applications where they each have to pay a permit fee. And that is a case, again, where it would really help if the Conservation Authority waived some of those permit fees under that case.
Any further questions? Thank you, Mr. Dingle, very much.
Many thanks. Appreciate it.
I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council receive the delegation from Dave Dingle, Chair of the Historic Murray Canal District Advocacy Group. Anything further from Council? All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. Are there any citizens' comments this evening? Thank you. So we'll move into staff reports. Our first report is the 2019 Annual Compliance and Summary Report on Brighton's drinking water system. Mr. Parkinson, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Not at this time.
I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council receive and approve the 2019 Annual Compliance and Summary Report on Brighton's drinking water system. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Mayor? Yes?
I believe that Councillor LeBlanc and I signed a motion regarding delegations. Did one of those not have two names on? I know we only have one on our agenda. I thought there was another name on there, and maybe that person has, was there not something with a Jack somebody?
A what?
Somebody put in a Jack. I'm sure I read something with two names.
I don't see anything. Is there someone here that wants to talk? The only thing I have is the Dingle delegation.
I usually prefer to read what I'm sure.
I'm moving right along. That's all right. Our second staff report is the 2019 department work plans, fourth quarter report. Mr. Castleman, we've read your report. Do you have anything to add or highlight?
Through you, yes, I've got a few things I'd like to highlight for council and the community. Very active fourth quarter, a number of different initiatives that staff took on, and I'll just give you a listing of a few that occurred in the last quarter. Staff had developed and presented for your consideration a modernization funding strategy. As you recall, back in March, we received about $619,000 in funding to improve efficiencies and modernize the community on a go-forward basis. We had a number of different initiatives that were presented and approved in the 2020 budget. So some exciting times, and looking forward to modernizing the activities within the organization. Second thing is staff has spent quite a bit of time with respect to the research and development and submission of green funding in support of the MBBR project. I know that certainly Preston and myself, along with a number of other people around the room, spent a considerable amount of time putting that application in. We're hopeful that we're going to be successful to support that number one priority for us. Thirdly, we had gone through a process of approving a comprehensive review of our official plan and zoning bylaw. That was completed back in December. We have no appeals to our zoning bylaw, and the approval of the official plan is at the county level at this point in time. A couple other items for your consideration is through the fire chief and his good works, we had completed a comprehensive emergency management exercise back in October, where we partnered up with the surrounding counties and local municipalities. Very successful event. We also, through his efforts, put together a new shoreline flooding policy that was recently approved by council back in November. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, and this is something that's important for the community, is that, as we all know, that we've been struggling with respect to provision of medical services, primary medical services within our organization, and quite recently have lost a couple of docs for a variety of different reasons. And we've been able to negotiate with one of the remaining doctors to hire a nurse practitioner. And Dr. Gao has been working hand in hand with the municipality to take on approximately 800 unattached patients throughout our community. So that's a good news story, and that's about to be implemented March 1st of this year. Those are my highlights.
Thank you, Mr. Castleman. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that Council approve the 2019 fourth quarter work plan report as depicted in Schedule 1. Are there any questions or comments from members of Council? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. Our next staff report is with regard to Cogeco Connections Incorporated Telecommunications Hub License Agreement. Mr. Castleman, we've read this report. Do you have anything to add or highlight? Thank you, sir. I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that Council authorize the execution of a telecommunication hub license agreement between the Municipality of Brighton and Cogeco Connections Incorporated as depicted in Schedule 1. Is there any discussion? Those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Now we move into notices of motion and motions, and these are both motions coming forward from the February 3rd meeting when they were read as notices. The first is moved by Mayor Ostrander, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Whereas the municipality of Brighton has experienced significant flooding events as a result of the 2017 and 2019 high Lake Ontario water levels, and whereas the high Lake Ontario water levels impacted municipal infrastructure, and whereas much of Brighton's shoreline is residentially developed, and whereas the water levels in Lake Ontario are regulated by an international body, and whereas financial assistance has not been provided to Brighton to assist with municipal land impacts, nor for the municipality to allocate resources to assist private landowners. Now therefore be it resolved that the Municipality of Brighton Council directs staff to seek legal advice to begin the process of finding out what litigation processes the municipality may undertake, and further that staff be directed to find a law firm suitable for this purpose, and further that staff and the solicitor be directed to provide information from both a corporate perspective, a perspective that may involve private landowners, and a regional partnership perspective. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? I'm going to try again. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried, I think. Did you voted in favor? Okay. I didn't see your hand go up. No. I didn't see your hand go up. The next motion is moved by Mayor Ostrander, seconded by Councillor Rowley. Whereas the municipality of Brighton experienced significant flooding events in 2017 and 2019 as a result of high Lake Ontario water levels, and whereas the municipality of Brighton has limited staff and financial resources, and whereas the municipality as a result of limited resources developed a policy to provide materials, sand and bags, in the event of another high water level event, but no human resource assistance, and whereas the water levels in Lake Ontario are managed by an international organization, and whereas much of the Brighton shoreline is residentially developed, and whereas the average age of the residents of the municipality of Brighton is older than the average age across the province of Ontario, and whereas the shoreline residents are requesting human resource assistance during another high water event, now therefore be it resolved that the Municipality of Brighton Council directs staff to provide a cost estimate for the hiring of a flood mitigation response professional team to aid with staff and volunteer coordination to assist residents who may be at risk of flooding, and further that Council authorize the Mayor to seek funding from upper levels of government to assist with this process. Is there any discussion? Go ahead.
So the idea is that staff is going to come back to us with a cost and we'll make a decision at that time?
Yes. And it comes out of discussions held at Roma, not held, but informal discussions at Roma, where it was anecdotally told to myself and at least one other member of council that there may be provincial assistance available if they knew what the hard costs would be. I don't know how real that is, but it'd be good to find out. Any further discussion? Councillor LeBlanc.
Through staff, one of the comments that came from one of the residents, elderly residents, wanted to know if, in that cost, if the staff can't do it, they were wondering if there could possibly be a subcontractor. Would that be one of the options you would look at?
I think that would be one of the costs that staff would look at to provide to council, so council could make a decision on whether we wanted to go down this road or not.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is similar to what Mr. Dingle was just speaking about.
Precisely.
And before.
Yeah. And he may be an interesting resource for staff to reach out to, given his recent delegation. Yeah. Anything further? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. Please, thank you. No comment. It was a good effort, Councillor Bateman. We have nothing under unfinished business, so So move into bylaws, and I have a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc. The council gives a bylaw its first, second, and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and the clerk to execute a telecommunications hub license agreement between the corporation of the municipality of Brighton and Cogeco Connections Incorporated. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? Motion's carried. And reports of advisory committees of council, reports and minutes, and council reports. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive the minutes of the committee of the whole meetings of January 27th, January 29th, February 5th, and February 6th as presented. Is there any discussion? Councillor Tadman.
Just that I had opposed some that was in there, so I would be voting against this.
Okay, this is just to receive the minutes. It's there is a. Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna read a recommendation coming out of those minutes. This is just to receive the minutes, but it's up to you how you vote. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion is carried. And we do have a recommendation coming out of those minutes, and it's moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council approve the recommendation from the Committee of the Whole, February 11th, for budget pre-approval for the following: a rubber tire excavator, the electric SUV, recruitment of records admin assistant from the clerk's economic development office, recruiter for director of planning and senior planner, pay equity audit, compensation review, recruitment of managers of operations, recruitment of 1.5 full-time equivalent operators, fire truck, and a new air compressor system for the fire department. And further, the council approved the February 11th, 2020 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion is carried. And we go into reports, minutes of statutory committees, boards, and external agencies. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman. The council received the Codrington Community Association meeting minutes of September, October, and November of 2019, and the annual general meeting minutes 2019 and 2020. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Moving on to correspondence, direction items, endorsements, and communications and petitions. I have a motion moved by Councillor Tadman, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council proclaim the days May 7th, 8th, and 9th as Carnation Days. This is for the Multiple Sclerosis Society. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Are there any, sorry, did you have a question? Okay. Any opposed? The motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council either receive or support the request from Goodwin Learning School for 2 free skating sessions at King Edward Park Arena for 2019 and 2020. Councillor Bateman, this is your motion. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Vink.
I just wanted to confirm that, have we done this in past years, and was it for 2 days?
No.
Yes.
Yes, we have in the past.
And it was 2 days last year as well?
Yeah, probably been doing this for probably about the last 5 years.
Yeah, okay, good, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Are there any opposed? The motion's carried. Moving into FYI correspondence, I have a motion moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Anderson, that council receive the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus resolution regarding rising flooding levels across Eastern Ontario. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, seconded by Councillor Bateman, that council receive the February 7th, 2020 Northumberland County updates. Is there any discussion? Councillor Bateman.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if you could clarify a couple things for us. don't have the dates. I think it's coming up in late February 28th maybe, the development charges information session. Do you know if they've contacted, or is it up to our local developers to find this out on their own? That there's going to be this stakeholder meeting, or?
My understanding is that they are reaching out to the development community.
Okay.
And they will be told about the public meeting.
Yeah, I think
but
they
they are
should.
holding stakeholder meetings
Yeah.
specifically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was one other, if I could. The one where they're seeking public feedback on the National Heritage System options. Northumberland County is developing the Natural Heritage System Plan required by the province. I didn't read anywhere where the conservation authorities are part of that. Are they taking part in that?
I don't sit on that working group, so I'm not sure. I'll find out.
All right. Thank you.
I'm just making a note. And I will triple check that the developers are being specifically invited to those stakeholder meetings. And I will let council know by email. Is that okay? Yeah, thank you. Councilor LeBlanc?
Through Chair, on the development charge, the meeting is on the 24th, 24, I think. The council here is a stakeholder, and I was wondering if the county would come and give a presentation in front of council for those development charges because they affect excessive affordability of homes.
That's not the plan, no. Any other questions? Are those in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. And now it's time for question period. If anyone from the public has any questions with regard to an item on tonight's agenda, please come forward. Bob?
Thank you, Council. My name is Bob Collins. I've got one question. I understand that Preston wants electric SUV. Is there going to be charging stations installed in the town itself? Because I was here months back where there was a gentleman, Doug Vole, I think his name was, said that he's going to have a demonstration over at King Edward's Arena about electric vehicles. And I was just wondering if this is going ahead with the SUV from the town, for the town. Are they going to be putting charging stations around the town?
So, two different subjects. Okay. The presentation by Mr. Vowles was a request for funds
Funding,
to help put on his show, and council didn't. There was no uptake from council. Let's just say that. The electric charging station is a grant or a grant request through OPG. Not a grant request, but a program request through OPG. And if Northumberland County is granted that program, 6 charging stations will be supplied here in Brighton, and then others across the county as well. But I don't think the SUV has anything to do with either of those two.
No.
This is just a sustainability goal on behalf of the municipality, and I suspect that SUV would be charged at the Public Works yard. But Mr. Parkinson, do you have any comment on that?
No, that's correct, Your Worship. It's going to be discharged at our shop.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
So, no, Bob, you can't go charge your car at the shop.
I have 4 friends in the town itself have electric vehicles.
It would be...
And they're within their own properties, but they want to know if there's going to be something in the community area or over here at City Hall.
So we'll have to, and I know the pharmacist, for example, at one of the local pharmacies has an electric vehicle that he charges at home. But
yes,
we'll have to wait and see what happens with that OPG program. And if there's no uptake there, I think municipalities across this province are going to have to wrap their heads around what to do next.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Are there any questions? Any other questions, members of the public? Do you have anything further? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we'll take a 10-minute recess before proceeding into camera. All right, everyone, we'll call the meeting back to order at 7:38 p.m. with a motion moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Bateman, that council resolve itself into closed session February 18th, 2020 at 7:38 p.m. pursuant to the Ontario Municipal Act 2001 as amended, subsection 239(2). B, being Rural Broadband Committee and Digital Archives Committee. And E, an LPAT appeal, Mannion Habitat for Humanity, 22 Price Street. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Vink, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council receive staff report regarding committees of council, Brighton Digital Archives, committee terms of reference and broadband appointment of members, and that council appoint the following applicants as committee members to the Rural Broadband Advisory Committee: Jason Landry and Dave Dingle. And further, that council approve the revised terms of reference for the Brighton Digital Archives Committee. Is there any discussion? Oh, go ahead. All in favor? Those opposed? The motion's carried. I have a motion moved by Councillor LeBlanc, seconded by Councillor Rowley, that council give a bylaw. It's for second and third reading and finally passes on this date. Being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Corporation of the Municipality of Brighton Council meeting held on February 18th, 2020. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. And finally, a motion moved by Councillor Rowley, seconded by Councillor LeBlanc, that the February 18th, 2020 council meeting adjourn at 8:15 p.m. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried.